Definitely, man. Y'all definitely look out for this book. Comes to the light, learning about the entangled families of Edgefield County, South Carolina. Y'all definitely need to get up on that, get your read on, get your education on, because there's gems in this book that we definitely did not learn in school. So shout out to Donya Williams, Arthur Donya Williams, for that. So let's get into some podcast topics. These are actually questions you sent to me, and I appreciate it. These are things you wanted to touch on, so we want to get right to it, and in no particular order. So let's talk about it. You hit me up and said you wanted to talk about how 245 years of American slavery, the system disputed and broke your family's tree, and the journey in reconnecting those lost branches of the family, including sharing research tips and tricks. So what's going on with this 245 years of American slavery that you wanted to talk about?
Well, the thing is that I mentioned Moses Williams, for example. One of the things that I learned in doing my research is that slavery in general is why African Americans are so separated and apart. When you're doing genealogy, you use the word "I was chosen." You're right. I was chosen not just to write the book, but also to do the genealogy. It is not for everybody. And because it's not for everybody, I say that by saying, you got to be able to accept the stuff that you're going to find. And in most instances, it's very hard and very difficult to accept that you had your father, your great 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 grandfather owned your great 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 grandmother, or that you had cousins that married each other.
Yep.
This is where the breaking comes apart. See, I had a grandmother by the name of Martha Brooks. She was the one that was owned by Preston Brooks. She was also his child, but she was breeded out. Now, some people don't know what breeding is. Breeding is when you have, just like a dog, you breed your dog, and then you sell your dog. Well, this is what happened with African Americans. And a lot of people don't believe that happened. I even have an area in the book where I talk about the fact that there was one group that actually said that no, breeding could never exist because it would mess with the morale of the family. And in messing with the morale of the family, then they would not get the work that they needed done. Okay, well, that's bull, because they didn't really care about the morale of African American families. Now, you had some good slave owners, as good as they could be, but you had some bad ones. And unfortunately, my two-time great-grandmother was probably a part of the one that was that bad one, because he protected his, and he wanted his, and he wanted to make sure his children were fed and properly, and that can't be done if he don't have nobody working in his field to pull his stuff.
My aunt, Mama Yoga, she did some research. I don't know if she used the program that you used, but I had asked her about a certain name, which is Womack. Womack was my great great grandmother's name, I believe. I think great grandmother's name. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And I'm not a Womack. I never understood why I wasn't. I didn't know that was her real name. I thought that was a name that she was married into, because we had cousins that was named Womack, but my name isn't that, so I didn't understand it. And I ran into a guy on Facebook, and his last name was Womack. And I asked him, did he know certain people? And he's like, nah, he don't know them. But his last name was my family's last name.
Okay.
So I went to my aunt and I asked her, I was like, hey, I ran into a guy named Womack, but he's not related to us. And what she told me was that was the slave master's name. So our name really, if I wanted, not saying it's that easy, because some people names change over the time, but Womack, the slave name Womack is still there. And it was easy for us to say, well, we're Womacks, and that was the slave owner's name for us. And my great grandmother passed away, I want to say about 2 years ago. And as I'm reading the obituary, it says that she was married to a guy named Womack. And it didn't make sense to me. How would you marry somebody with the same name? So it kind of goes back to what you were saying, how cousins and was marrying each other, and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. And like I said, it just blew my mind when I read that. Like, I thought it was a misprint. It's like, okay, his name was
No, it's
Womack.
not. It's not a
It's,
misprint.
huh?
It's not a misprint, and I can
Yeah.
explain it to you. I can basically what happens is, let's take my great great grandmother for example. Her last name is Brooks. In 1870, when Black people were first counted on the census record, she and her children, including my great grandfather Peter, were Brookses. But in 1880, the name was switched to Yeldale. She kept the last name Brooks. So my biggest issue was, number one, why did she change all of her children that were still young enough? Why did she change their last names to Yeldale? And number two, why did she keep the last name Brooks? It took me, I'm going to say, about 10 years to even understand what was going on. Then notice I said understand, because I still haven't actually figured out why. But I'm pretty certain that it's because of the fact that Preston was her father, and that's why she kept the Brooks last name, because that was her family name. But to this day, I don't know why she had changed my great grandfather's last name to Yeldale. I have no idea. One of the things that I do know is that after the Civil War ended and we were realizing that we were free, Black people had the opportunity to change their name.
Okay.
It was that easy. So you could pick a name out the sky if you wanted to. If you were a Brooks and you was like, you know what, I don't like that name. I didn't like my slave owner. I'm changing my name and changing it to something else. Well, it just so happened that the Yeldales, who were quote unquote good slave owners, that's what ended up my family's last name. So did she take that name simply because they were good slave owners, or was one of those men, or was her the man that she married, because she was listed as a widow in 1880? Did the man that she married have the last name Yeldale, and she shared it with them?
Right.
And those are some of the reasons. But to go into as far as the marriage is concerned, now she was a breeder. I found and confirmed 7 of her children, and there's still more that she had. I don't know who they are. So if they came back and they got and then ended up marrying somebody and your DNA got mixed up in it, guess what? You just married your cousin and didn't know it.
Right.
This talks about the broken family tree. This is why your tree is broken, because you don't know who your family is at this point.
We can still do that now, right? You can still be dating somebody and not know that you're related to that person.
Oh, darling, you could be my cousin.
That is a fact.
Name Womack is on my is one of the surnames that I connect to.
Womack? See?
Wow. Yes. That's one of the names that I connect to. It's right at the bottom of the book, Womack.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
So it just all depends on, like exactly what it is that you're searching for and how you're going to go about searching for, because you never know who your family is. You never know. I've come to the realization that I cannot marry anybody from South Carolina. Can't do it. I'm not going to do it. If you're from South Carolina, it's not going to happen. And you know what makes it even worse? Is that our family, during the Negro migration, the one between 1910 and 1970, they moved straight up the East Coast. So they hit D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, New York. They hit it all. So I had family going straight up the East Coast that I knew nothing about. And until I started doing my research is when I learned it. And the thing is, in D.C., I have so many family members right here in D.C. that I had no clue. And we still, to a certain degree, don't know how we connect. We just know where we connect, and that's Edgefield, South Carolina.
Well, I'm glad somebody's doing their research, because y'all could be down there hooking up and not know. At least somebody's doing some work.
Yeah, it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Yeah, because I guess you wouldn't really think that if somebody, I don't think nobody thinks that deep. Not anybody, but most people don't think that deep that a stranger, you know what, I might be related to this person somewhere down the line. I don't know. I just think we see attractive people, we set it off and we make things happen. But,
Right.
at least you are doing the math. So yeah, that was a dope topic that I knew I could relate to. Is the fact that that was the first time, and I found it out like last year. I'm 34, and I found out at 33 that Womack was actually the slave master's name. I'm thinking that over time, everybody's name changes so much that it would take so much to find out who or what plantation, what area that you were actually from. But it was like, nope, that's her name.
Well, that's
That's
not. Well, I'm gonna say it like this. That's not. It's true and it's not true. First of all, one of the things that I really, really love about researching is to debunk the comment that most African Americans say. I can't find anything past 1870.
okay.
I love the fact that I can debunk that now because Martha Brooks was born in 1834. That's 35, 36 years before 1870. But I found her. You have to just do the work. It's harder for African Americans. There's no doubt in that. But you have to do the work. Now, I can honestly say that I'm blessed because Edgefield, South Carolina was one of the few places that was burned down after the Civil War. Because, you had Union soldiers going into these southern places and burning these buildings and burning records and things of that nature. Edgefield is a gem. Not one record was burnt.
Mm.
So I'm blessed and I'm lucky to be able to know that this is where my family actually came from. And as I do my research and start going through all the newspapers, the deeds, the wills, the land information, probate records, I get to the point where I may be able to find my family. But I know Edgefield, even though Edgefield didn't get their records burned, there are other places that you can still go and you can still find your family information and you can go back.